This is a reunion in a way for me with IONS. I was very close to Willis Harmon. He would fly into LA and come to my home and these programs for activists in my home. He was instrumental in actually initiating and supporting some of them. And then Tom Hurley, I don't know, you guys are young, you probably don't remember all these people, but he was Willis's number 2, and we were close. I was invited to one of your board meetings. Is this all IONS? Yeah, so I was a guest at one of the board meetings years ago. So I'm very happy to be reconnecting up here. I don't want to tell you too much about myself more, you know, talk more about anything other than the show, because I've got a lot of stuff, and keeping my fingers crossed I can do it all. But I have been producing programs that are all about consciousness, essentially, for many years. And when the crop circles came along, they were just another subject matter that seemed interesting. And I was producing programs in LA about them. And they were so interesting, I thought, I got to go over to England and see what's happening. And so in 1993, I made my first trip there. And I just got hooked, and I thought, oh God, I'm an impatient person. I don't like slow change. I want to change everything. And I thought, you know, if we knew we were being visited, and there was lots of evidence, it would get into every human being's psyche, and we would have to rethink things. And so I got so plugged into this whole crop circle thing. I'm now the crop circle queen. And so I actually have to go back to rebranding myself, because I'm more than that. But today I am your crop circle queen. And this presentation I've done before with PowerPoint just once, and then we've revised it also. Fingers crossed that I can work all these mechanisms. Thank God for Cyrene Houdini. She is a magician. So so the way I start most of my programs, I thought, oh, I wouldn't have to start that way here, but I'll tell you that this is the way I do it. I pull this out of a hat because I want people to believe the impossible. A friend of mine did this. He came into my house, he bought it. It's stainless steel, and I left the price tag on it. And it takes him a couple seconds. He could have undone it too. No, don't undo it. I want it this way. I want to be able to show people. So if this is possible, how about crop circles and whatever? So anyway, that's my little, but you guys, you all know about this. Most people go, ah! You know. So I'm starting here with a little booklet that I've had online for a long time, because obviously the issue with crop circles is to deal with everybody's skepticism, which is good. I mean, skepticism is good, but radical skepticism, no. We want to be curious. We want to be open-minded. And so I have this booklet on, it's my inducement actually for signing up for my mailing list, where I say you'll get this booklet, but it's just a link that is online now. And I'm going to kind of take you, the booklet will take you through a lot of the data that speaks to why crop circles can't be hoaxed. The first thing is, where are they? These are the basic questions that everybody wants to know. They've been on every continent except Antarctica. And I'm not illustrating that one. When, astonishingly, people don't really realize how long they've been around, and reports exist for 298 of them before 1980, 25 before 1940. And I've just estimated this 2,000 worldwide. You'll read, usually there's a 10,000 figure. It's been used for years, same 10,000. Wrong, there haven't been that many. I think when they first person to count that way was probably counting all the elements in a crop circle as individual crop circles. I don't know how they got that number. And we don't have an accurate count, but I don't know, I would say we're closer to maybe worldwide since it's been noticed, which is the 70s that we started really paying attention, late 70s, early 80s. Maybe 5,000, you know, it's still a sizable number, but it's not 10. And indications are the phenomenon is much older, even prehistoric, showing up in cave paintings. That's from Australia, 2000 BC. And you can see, that looks like a spaceship, doesn't it? That looks like an astronaut. Maybe that's a crop circle, you know, who knows? They used to say, by the way, initially that in England, what were these things that started showing up? And the accepted story was they were landing pads for UFOs, to the extent that anybody believed, you know. But people were believing then. It was before skepticism took over, people were very curious worldwide. it was in newspapers, headlines, whatever, all this amazing phenomenon. And so what you also see here is people, there's a serpent running away or slithering away. All these people are backing off from whatever that is. I think that's quite a wonderful illustration. In what? Well, I've named a whole bunch of vegetables and grass and everything that grows, and in fact they have been in virtually everything that grows, even the things I've named there. There's more than that. And I want to actually read you a story. Somebody's telling you about a tree incident, and the event must have happened between the years 1963 and 69, Grand Lake, New Brunswick, Canada. I was raised in a town 10 minutes drive from the lake. The area had been strip mined for coal. In 1960, the mining company started to reforest the area. This was the most frequently used road to Princess Park, one of the most popular beaches used by the public, where trees were planted on both sides of the road. In about 3 years, maybe a few more, they'd grown to be quite tall, and the butts of these trees were about 3 inches in diameter. In the middle of a summer afternoon, I was in a car on my way to the lake. When we came up to the stand of pine trees, the road was blocked with police and armed vehicles. We were motioned to not stop, move along slowly. While passing by, I noticed on both sides of the road 2 circles. The trees were all bent to the ground. The circles were about 10 feet away from the edge of the road, one on either side. They were fairly large, 12 feet in diameter. Odd thing was that all the trees laid down flat to the ground, all toward the outside of the circles. The tops of these trees all pointed to the circumference of the circles. Later that afternoon, Army trucks were still directing traffic away from the site. Talk around town was that bears had pushed the trees down. All right. Nothing else was ever given for an explanation. I knew that couldn't be the answer. There were 2 perfectly formed circles, exactly the same size. They were each the same distance from the edge of the road. All the trees were pointing from the center toward the outside of the circles. Months later, the trees were cut as close to the ground as they could. Fencing was put up to keep the curious out. We could see through the fence. There were no broken tree trunks. You could see the butts of the trees enough to see they were severely curved at ground level. Impossible to do without breaking the trees. Why would they call the army if it was only bears? Why would they fence it off? So anyway, I just love that story. So, okay. So now we're going to go on to the next item on here. Eyewitnesses. At least 25. There have been a few more since then. I did this a few years ago. And they all say the same thing, by the way. Their people happen to be around and they see this thing happen. They all say they go down in about 6 or 7 seconds. No matter how big, no matter whatever, the whole thing whooshes down in 6 or 7 seconds. The video that's popular online with whirling balls of light that go around and then the circle whooshes down, that's been done in a lab, unfortunately. Nobody has ever caught this on video. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that these things are, you know, inexplicable. It's not all people. And why haven't they been caught on video? Well, the circle makers are doing their thing, and they seem to be watching us. And if they don't want to be caught on video, they're not going to be caught on video. So I would say that that would probably be it, because they try. They have watches going on. They'll have a watch. The BBC and Japanese television had a couple of watches early on. And like 2 weeks, they were watching the main field where they always get circles in that field. No circles. The day they leave, circle. You know, really, that sort of thing was very common. So I think that, you know, we're being given what something wants to give us. And for whatever reason, you know, they don't want to make it too easy, I don't think. They don't want to hand us anything that says, oh, we got it. You know, I think maybe there's a prime directive. You're not allowed to do that. You've got to make us work for it. And then once we work for things and really understand, oh, yeah, I really understand, then we have it. You know, it's not like somebody gave it to us. I'm going to show you the largest and the longest here. This is the largest. It was 2001. It's the size of 2 football fields. I want you to picture that. You're on one side. You can't see the other side. It's actually on a bit of a hill. It was so huge that it was just staggering. And here's a little close-up of it, but of course you have it on my shirt as well. 409 separate circles, perfect pattern. That one, you know, the hoaxers, they don't exactly claim everything, because in a way they don't want everybody to think that there's no phenomenon, because if so, they'll lose the tourists and they'll lose the people watching what they do. So you've always got this little hoaxer buzz going on. When this one came, the main hoaxers said, "Oh my God." So nobody ever claimed this one. And here's the longest one. Can you see? It goes all the way here, and there are circles along the way, little ones and a big one. I walked that circle. It was actually funny. I was with two girlfriends, and we parked our car, we walked, and by the time we got to the very end, it was a downpour, the likes of which it was blinding, and we're 3/4 of a mile from our car. Well, I'll tell you, when we got back to the car, 3 girls, we took all our clothes off. We were dripping, and we drove back. The windows were all steamy, nobody could see us. It was quite a little adventure. This one is in there because this is the one that changed everybody's opinion. Prior to this circle, of course, we're trying to explain, scientists are trying to explain, what is this thing that's going on all over England, mostly focused in England. That's where the study goes on, because you know every summer they're going to be there in this particular area. They were heavily trying to float a theory that it was a weather phenomenon. Whirlwinds would come and make these circles. And I'll show you soon the early circles. They're just simple little circles. Maybe it could be that sort of thing, maybe. But when this one came along, this was the definitive, it can't be that, because you have 4 quadrants here. It's going in different directions in each quadrant. You know, a whirlwind isn't going to do that. Then you have an outside ring that's another feature that's not as simple as a little whirlwind sort of thing, and a center that also has its own flattening in a different direction. Also notice, by the way, these are tram lines, because I'm going to show you one that doesn't have any, and that I'll make a point with it. But virtually all the fields have these lines in England. I don't know, all over. I don't know what happens the rest of the world, but in England, there are small family farms there. We don't have agribusiness in England, or at least not in this area. And that's the way the machinery gets in, the fertilizers and the harvesters and what have you. They go along those lines. And the protocol in crop circle land is to walk the tram lines, because if you don't, you'll see a lot of pictures of jaggedy lines going across fields when you see crop circles. That's because people didn't walk in the tram lines. But, you know, we have protocols over there, and one of them is you walk in the tram lines and you don't disturb the crop. This is the next one I'm going to show you, is the one that was in an organic field. They didn't have any tram lines because they weren't fertilizing. I don't know how they harvested. But this is Ohio. And, you know, you get how did they get in there? When they walk in, you see the little jaggedy lines. How did they get there? And it's a beautiful circle. It's, you know, not all that complicated, but it's very beautifully, the geometry is beautiful in it. I don't know, we like those because, you know, we like to see all the evidence of things that we can't do. We want to counteract this idea that they're all made by people, even though there are a lot of them that are, and more and more. In fact, maybe now the phenomenon may be shifting its focus, maybe leaving England. Now I'll give you a little history. This is what we count as the first crop circle ever, 1678. It's in the literature of the time, a woodcut. There's a little story in Old English above it. This is the picture. The story is about how somebody came to the farmer and it was too expensive to harvest it, and he said, "Let the devil do it." And in the morning, this is what appeared in his field. We like to think of this as the first crop circle, although the story says it was cut. Crop circles are not cut, they're bent. But close enough for government work. Now back to a little history of our modern phenomenon. This is from the 80s. This is how they started. They were all, either they were single circles, circles with circles around them. That got a little harder for the weather people, but still they were clinging to it until we had that 4-quadrant one. Sometimes there would be like 2 in a field, 2 circles in a field, or 3 circles in a field, but all very simple circles to begin with. And then this happened. This was in 1990, and this changed everything. This made the world press. This is the first time that the world press started paying attention to crop circles. Actually, the night this appeared, another one appeared that was very much like it in another field. The farmer had a shotgun, which sometimes the farmers do. They do not want people in their fields, and they think people made these, and they're angry. But this one, somebody went and got the press, and the press came, and the thing exploded all over the world because it was so astonishing. Did you ever see the Led Zeppelin album cover? That's that one. That was 1990, the one that got the attention of the world. In 1991, there were two astonishing crop circles that built on the impression that the first one had made. And this was one of them. This is a very ancient, hermetic, alchemical pattern, 1654, a book called Kabbalah in Alchemia, old languaging that we don't use anymore. It describes the process of creation, and too long a story to take you through all the aspects of it, but also that second piece is some geometry that was done on it. These things are all, not all, most of them, many of them, have fabulous geometry, and you'll see more about that later, but that's a little diagram that kind of shows you all the geometric relationships there. And the next one is the other one that appeared in 1991. This is the Mandelbrot symbol. This appeared right outside Cambridge, where Benoit, is that his first name? Mandelbrot, it's kind of a funny first name, was a professor. I wouldn't say he invented fractals. I took this from somewhere to tell you the story, but he developed a lot of the mathematical theory and how to render fractals using computers, as well as popularizing fractals. Back then, they were strange mathematical concepts that no one knew about, but now they're on common people's desktop wallpapers and in lots of computer game graphics. So, you know, a fractal is an endlessly reiterating pattern. You know, they'll do things, the crop circles will do things like that. So Mandelbrot is a professor at Cambridge. It appears outside of Cambridge. Actually, 3 of those little dots are a little bit off, but they conform to another thing in crop circles, which is something that Gerald Hawkins came up with, that there are musical relationships to the diatonic scale in the geometry of crop circles, and those 3 little circles on the outside of the heart conform to the diatonic scale relationships. You have a lot of these kind of, you know, intermingling patterned ideas and geometric ideas. It's like they keep throwing ideas at us. They keep throwing different kinds of ways of seeing at us. That it's like great artistry, you know? What more can they do? What other interesting kind of aspects can they demonstrate in here? Well, that was the end of, almost the end of 1991, but this was the end of 1991. This is the famous Doug and Dave. And still today, crop circles, oh no, that got disproved years ago. Doug and Dave did it, or if people remember the names, a lot of times they do. Well, isn't that interesting? This press release, and you see Men Who Conned the World, it was in newspapers all over the world. It was a press release. 2 little farmers from England in the middle of nowhere get a press release sent all over the world. Well, we do a lot of that in my movie, and I have DVDs out there. All of you are welcome to take one. Well, I don't think so. You'll get a little more of the story and a little bit of the government and perhaps their involvement in getting this story all over the world. And then when they came out with their release, and okay, all the crop circles have been made by Doug and Dave. Then they had made them do a demonstration for the press. How do you like the geometry? I mean, really. And in fact, when they said to Doug and Dave, because it was already the phenomenon was already geometrically sophisticated early on. Well, I showed you that. And they said to Doug, but you know, not everybody knew about everything. And they said to Doug and Dave, what about geometry? And they said, what? Geometry? Okay, so much for Doug and Dave. Well, here are some of the early patterns that tended, you know, to be popular in the early years. And now I have a little human interest coming. So this is Shirley, and me in 1993. And this is Shirley drawing me a picture of why I'm having my picture taken with Shirley. What is Shirley up to? Well, Shirley has parked herself in this crop circle because she has a story, and she tells people her story. And so she's telling me her story, and she's drawing, this is me, by the way, the legs. And she's telling me about what happened in this crop circle. Well, what happened in this crop circle is that she was there one day, and then she came back the next day, and you know, they have different elements, and another circle had been added. And it had this first little piece there, 9 a.m., when she went into the circle. That's in the center. That's typical in the center of crop circles. They'll have these standing stalks. And she went to get her friends who had been with her there the day before to say, there's another circle there. And when she came back at 9:45, the second little drawing is the outside stalks are halfway bent down. That's 9:45. Then she's her back is to the circle, and she's talking to people over here, and she turns around, and when she turns around, the thing is down all the way. I don't know, but I like that story. And she draws it, and she's this is her circle now. She's hanging out in this circle. So that's my little person, and she's signing her name on these little autograph things that she's giving everybody of her story of what happened in this crop circle. So now I'm giving you a few of the pattern groups that were appearing in the 90s. There were a group of, or many circles that were insects. There were galaxies and, you know, things of the cosmos and planets and what have you. And then we got to the first actual fractal circle. This appeared outside Stonehenge in 1996. I was there. See Europe's best crop circle, and I've got the first T-shirt. I met the guy in the road who had the T-shirts. He was bringing them. The farmer was going to cut it out. I'll just tell you this much. He was really angry. He didn't know what it was. This crop was all down, and somebody showed him an aerial. And he saw the aerial, and he thought, oh, that's so beautiful. He ended up putting up a toll, they call them honesty boxes now, because a lot of the crop circles have them, where they ask you to put a pound or two into this honesty box that people steal. They have a little trouble keeping the honesty boxes, but or they break into them, whatever they do. But that's kind of typical now. He made a lot of, he was angry because he was going to lose the money from the harvest, you know. But he made a lot more money from the people. Thousands of people actually flocked to this crop circle. By now, they're a phenomenon. By now, it's an industry, and it's a vacation spot, and tourists are, you know, coming over, and every bed and breakfast is booked, and there are a lot of them over there. So the farmer did well on that one. And then the same year, that's called the Julia set, from whatever mathematics does that with. This is called the triple Julia. And what I wanted to show you here, geometric precision in a kind of nice illustration. Look at this, this, and this. It's an equilateral triangle. Now, go out one more. This, this, and this. But you see what I mean? If you go out all the way, they're all equilateral triangles all the way out. I like that. Now, when I say pattern groups, when one thing hits, like the insect or the astrological one, after that, you never have a repeat. You never have a duplication. But what you will get, they're like pattern groups. So then, you know, you had a lot of different insects, and you had a lot of different planets and what have you. And we've had a lot of different fractals patterns over the years. This one is this, I especially love. It's a Koch snowflake. It has an identity in mathematics, and I'm actually going to show you a little video of how the math builds a fractal, actually, using this one. And the fractals being infinite patterns that just keep repeating and repeating. So I'm going to show you a little video of that. But before I do that, I want to show you a second one that appeared the same year, which is also Koch snowflake. Now, this one is the exact same, but in the center, the white is the down crop, and the dark is the standing crop. You see the outside pattern here? Well, look, it's the inside pattern. the inside pattern here, just to notice that. And then here's a little interior shot just so you see what the interior looked like. And now, please God, I'm going to play you a little video of how this thing is constructed mathematically. Okay.
Here's how we create this thing. First, take an equilateral triangle. Take one of the sides and divide it into 3 equal pieces, like so. Okay, now create another equilateral triangle out of that middle segment just created, and erase the bottom part. Now, that's done to all the other 2 sides. To continue on with this fractal, that same process, we'll call it from now on an iteration, is done to all the remaining sides. Here is something which demonstrates the principle. No matter how far you zoom in on one part of this, the process keeps continuing. As you can see, the side lengths of the little segments get smaller and smaller, but they always remain the same. This process continues on into infinity.
You know, it can't continue to infinity, obviously, in a field. And so, but they're artists. So how do you make an artistic translation of this infinite thing? And those little dots are kind of representing the infinite pattern. And they're also in a relationship that's bigger and smaller and what have you. But that's the artist's idea of demonstrating something related to fractalness. I put a few slides in here. This isn't fractal, but I want to show you this is frequently what's happening in crop circles geometrically. These circles are half this circle. The ones inside that are half that circle. The ones inside that are half the other circle. They're very precise geometric relationships. I put in a few like that. There's another one. You know, each circle is reducing mathematically, very geometrically precise. Another one as well. That's a common thing that goes on in the geometric aspect of crop circles. See how beautiful that lay is? They just take my breath away. Now I'm back to my booklet again to show you some other things. The first crop that is the main canvas for crop circles, it's canola, and it's a beautiful yellow flower, and those stalks are like celery. They're brittle as celery, impossible to bend by hand without breaking. Because we're always looking for how can they not be hoaxed. The other thing to say about them is it's very smelly, it's very tall, and it's very thick. And the thought of being out there in it, maneuvering it, it's just not possible, actually. And then it's also be very unpleasant. Here's a field of canola, a circle in just to see how beautiful that is. Oilseed rape is what they call it over there. And then I have another one that's just one of the things I like a lot, like the tricks they play. Now look, that's a crop circle. Now, how did they do that? This preceded an eclipse, and they will do that too. They'll show us what's going to happen, what we're expecting on Earth. You know, people say, what's the story, the overall story? I don't think there isn't, you know, like it's hieroglyphics or something, and there's a language or an alphabet, and we'll learn it, and then we'll get the message. I don't think so. I think they're just showing us over and over again that there's another intelligence, and that's all we need to know. They don't need to tell us things. In fact, if we ever accept that fact and welcome them, maybe they can tell us a lot. They're way ahead of us. They're visiting us. We're not visiting them. But I just think they're dazzling us with the fact that, why don't they get it? We're doing all these impossible things, and so all these little tricks they do. So that's another little trick that they did. Okay, so now I'm going to move along, and I'm not going to explain these to you because I have a video that's going to explain them. But these are some of the slides from the science work that's been done. We have one lab, a guy named William Levengood, who did many of the crop circle. There has been real science done, in laboratory science done, and you're going to hear that in the video from the person who is the main organizer of the lab work. And the lab work will is indicating that there are things that happen that can't happen. I'm not, she's going to explain that all, but these are control groups, like on the left, I think, and what's in the field on the right. She'll explain it. Next one, that's a typical thing that happens in the crop circles: blown nodes with holes in them, elongated nodes. Nancy Talbot, bltresearch.com is where you can find all the science. She's T, and she actually organized it all. And this is Nancy in the first film. First film is Crop Circles Quest for Truth in 2002 that I was the executive producer on. I came back from England in 1996 and I thought, how do I tell the world about this? How do you tell the world about anything? You make movies. And so I started snooping around, but you can't just hire a movie maker, a filmmaker, to go do crop circles. So I kind of, how could I do this? And finally I found someone who had a girlfriend who was a crop circle researcher, and she brought him to England. And he was trying to get a IMAX deal. And I said, if you don't get your IMAX deal, would you make a movie for me? And indeed, that's what happened. And so finally, this 2002 is when that movie came out. And I put it together. I knew more about the phenomenon than he did. We had a 10-week shoot in England. And so I was organizing the shoot and told him what to go, and, what was interesting. And I watched him do all this. And now, we can all make movies now. It's not like big studios make movies. We can make bad movies. A lot of bad movies being made now because it's so easy to make movies. But I thought, I could do that, or I could organize it. I don't know the different crafts involved, but I could certainly hire the people. And, I went to school on that first one. And so the second one, I am the filmmaker, and I hired all the people who did my movie. But this was his movie. And the reason I wanted to make another one after this is he didn't make the one I wanted him to make. He had the means that I raised for him, and he made a history of the crop circles. He was not supposed to make a history of them. He was supposed to make a passion of them. Why are people so excited? Why are people giving up their lives for crop circles? And they do. There's a whole community in England and from around the world. They gather in England every summer. They do the lectures, they produce conferences, they write the books, they take the pictures. It's like a cottage industry. And people who had other really successful careers got just mesmerized by these things. And so that was the movie that he was, and that's the movie I made. My movie is the passion of the crop circles. His is the history of the crop circles. But he's got this, I don't have science sequences in mind, but this is a little science sequence so you can see what was going on. This is Nancy Talbot of BLT Research.
And what Levingood documented beautifully, and I would guess tediously for many, many years, were the basic changes in the plants. One of the things that he discovered was that the seeds taken from crop circle plants grew totally differently than the controls. If the crop was young and immature, the seed was not fully formed when the crop circle occurred, the seedling was depressed, the seedling's energies. Often they wouldn't germinate, and if they did germinate, not strongly enough to be viable. However, in mature crop, where the seed was already formed when the energies hit, then you got exactly the opposite. You got increased growth and yield. This is this case in Maryland where the elongated nodes occurred. And the nodes are bent to the left and the right. Node bending is a natural response of the plant if it's young and growing, if it's knocked down and not killed. So if you go to a crop circle and nodes are bent, if you don't know when that crop circle occurred, and you don't know the age of the crop at the time, you don't know whether this node bending might be due to natural phototropism or whether it's something that occurred during the event. If you get there quickly and you know that it has just happened and you find massive node bending like this, these 90-degree angles, this was part of the phenomenon. It actually bent the nodes. And both Burke and Levingood, as far as I know to this day, are pretty much committed to the idea that the causative agency is an ionospheric plasma, and a plasma that's generated in the ionosphere. I want to show you the node enlargement photo. The top are nodes. These are stem nodes taken from inside the formation. The bottom shows you the controls, which are taken at a considerable distance outside. What Levengood says is going on is that the moisture, remember the plant stem is hollow, and the nutrients, the moisture which nourishes the plant, goes up through this stem. Plasmas, a fact about plasmas is that they emit microwaves in bursts, pulses. His idea is that the microwaves from these pulses are connecting with the moisture inside the plant stem, just like they would in your microwave oven, heating the plant up, which softens it and allows it to fall. The moisture inside turns to steam, and as it does so, it has to escape. Well, if the plants are young and pliable, the outer fibers are pliable, the steam escapes by stretching the nodes. That's how you get the elongated nodes. If the energy is extremely intense, and or if the crop is old and the fibers are tough, then it can't get out by stretching it because the fibers won't stretch, or it's just too much energy. Then it blows a hole right out at the node.
Okay. That's called the blown node.
Yeah, and those are our exploded nodes. These are samples of corn. The crop was down, and here were these expulsion cavities. The amount of energy that it would take to do this in full-grown corn must be quite astounding.
And this is another thing that we have noticed with the true phenomenon, that it seems to locate where there's water, very close to water.
It's something like 93 to 98% of the formations do in fact occur over this chalk and or green sand aquifer.
Right.
As the summer comes on and there's less and less moisture, I mean rain, the aquifer recedes. And as it does, it sinks down lower. As the edges of it recede, you get a strong electrical charge set up in the ground because the water percolating through the chalk creates this charge. As the summer goes along, you see the charge increases. The lower the aquifer is, the farther the water has to travel through the chalk,
Right.
the greater the electrical charge.
Okay.
Well, guess what? The numbers of crop circles cluster along the edges of the aquifer also. And one of the questions that comes up all the time is, why don't they occur everywhere? Well, we don't know yet why they don't, but this is one possible answer.
Okay, onward. This is a guy named Eljo Hasselhoff, and he's a physicist from the Netherlands. And he wrote this book, The Deepening Complexity of Crop Circles. And one of the main points he makes in the book, or one of the things he talks about in the book, is that in the circles that are circular, in the crop circles that are circular, the node bending is greater at the central part of the circle, and it gets less and less and less predictable, symmetrical patterning as the distance gets greater from the center. Back to my booklet, this is another little phenomenon. For whatever reason unknown, flies will stick to crop circles. They'll be stuck to them. If they're in the ground, you can shake them and the flies will stay on. If you pick it, in very short order, the fly will come off. Don't know, just I found that it's just interesting. One of the things you wonder, what's that all about? Don't really know. Another thing to talk about is the lay of the crop circle. Look at the basket weave in that one on the left. Now, come on, that's not guys with boards that are pushing these things down. They're going to be in the field weaving these things. And then the other one is a center. I don't know if you can see it well enough here, but it's all very precisely like a work of art in and of itself. And that was the center of this circle, and right in that central part there is this gorgeous configuration of circular lay patterns. And then another aspect of the phenomenon is sometimes there's a pattern on the top, like the lay is going one way, or you see a pattern in the lay as you've seen. And if you get underneath it, sometimes there's another pattern underneath that, and sometimes even deeper than that. Sometimes the pattern goes several layers down. What is that? Different patterns. And here is another illustration of my booklet where you see that one little standing stalk in the center of this one. Well, why didn't that go down if, again, we're talking about guys with boards, and you'll find that that little thing that's up is a different plant. It's not the wheat or whatever that is that's the main plant in the circle. By the way, canola is the first crop early on, then barley, which is beautiful. It waves in the breeze. You'll see I have beautiful things in my movie of waving barley. It's very beautiful to watch. And then wheat is actually the main canvas. That comes third in the season. But when we get a genuine circle, what we say is a genuine circle, you'll find that these extraneous plants that happen to spring up don't get knocked down, so that whatever is being programmed, however, it's being programmed specific to the crop that the circle is made out of. And this is me, for no reason other than I like that picture. Okay, this is another thing that's typical in crop circles. You get these little features of woven stuff, sometimes in the center. And here's me and Bashar. You guys know Bashar? He's a big crop circle. You know the channel, Bashar? No? We don't know him?
Yeah, I do.
He's quite a popular. He's still popular. Channeling's mostly left, but Bashar's still popular. We actually reached in there and we got a rock out of there that had been split in half, and it's one of those geo whatever it is, it has a little center thing in it, you know. That was actually that triple Julia, and it was right in the middle of it. I showed you the geometry, how those perfect equilateral triangles, well, that thing is on hilly ground. And so another of the things we notice in the phenomenon is, how do they adjust so that when you're taking a picture from above, you get this perfect geometry of, it's not flat ground. I mean, it's yet another, you know, head scratcher. How do they do that? I'm going to show you another video here about another crop circle fascination of squaring the circle. The video will explain it. Leonardo's man there is a very obviously popular image, and it's doing that. This is from my movie. This is a piece from my movie.
The crop circles were simply an extension of the magic that exists in stone circles. The two are identical in a funny way. They're both formal manifestations of basic geometric, harmonic, and cosmic truths.
The most successful areas of research in crop formations are undoubtedly geometry and mathematics. And they're yielding the biggest results and the most promising, exciting lead, in a sense. And there's something about that, because it's about the unfolding of the mathematical or geometrical structure within creation.
I think Nick Collestrom's recently pointed out that some of these simple formations he's been working on are solutions to geometrical problems that no one has seen before. And Nick said that's very, very, very important. And this is what Gerald Hawkins picked up early on as well, that the designs in themselves solve Euclidean problems in an entirely new way.
It's interesting, Alan Brown's done some work on the quintuplet formations now, where you've got a circle in the middle and four little circles outside, and realised that each one squares the circle, and they contain actually a lot of geometrical information, easily as complex as some of the more busy-looking formations of later years.
His work on analysing the geometry of just the really simple early formations is just mind-blowing, because, you know, it really does illustrate that right from the beginning there was a level of sophistication to this of which we've had no idea at all.
This system of the quintuplet actually enables you to provide solutions to squaring the circle, most of which have never ever been seen before. These are all the ones that I've studied.
Right.
And these are, each one of them providing a squared circle solutions.
Squaring the circle is an exercise in drawing which attempts, without measurement, simply by the use of geometry, to produce a square whose perimeter equals the circumference of the circle.
The whole power of the squaring of the circle was never its function as a mathematical tool, it was its symbolic nature.
For the sacred geometer, the problem was never really about finding an absolute solution. It was the unification of the square, which was symbolic of the material, the earthly, and the circle, which was symbolic of the spiritual.
So once you reconcile and equal the perimeter with the circumference, you've symbolized a true marriage of earth with heaven, of the mechanical with the spiritual.
as the temple was seen as the place where heaven and earth were brought together, the spiritual and the material. The squared circle was often used as a template for the layout of places of worship, and we can find this from the structure of the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Hindu temple layout, often Gothic cathedrals. These sort of structures, Florentine, Byzantium building, were using this idea to imbue the physical structure with a symbolic nature.
If you trail through all the literature available, I reckon you pull half a dozen examples of squaring the circle. And look, I mean, I've now
How many?
50.
Oh my God, all different.
All different. But I just want to show how I see this working. There's the silhouette of the formation. If you put a square around these satellites, the circle that runs through the centre of the satellite would be an exact squared circle relationship to that. But then that left this thing of, well, what's the function of the mother circle? And it was only then that, I mean, after working through many examples, that I realised that the whole thing was actually showing you a geometric sequence of how to back-engineer a squared circle starting from a simple circle. And this is how it works. Each case, you begin with a circle. If you construct a pentagram within it and have the circle contained by that, that's your mother circle. If you then took another pentagram within that mother circle, then you put a pentagon inside that, that gives you this circle. You then take that inner derived satellite circle and you move it out so its centre sits on your original circle. And once you've done that, that gives you the exact size and position away from the mother circle to construct the squared circle. You know, when I sit and think about it, I mean, that whole concept of encoded geometrical designs in wheat fields, I mean, it's just so far out there.
I wanted to say a couple of things about some of the things you saw in there. I briefly mentioned Gerald Hawkins before. He was the head of the astronomy department at Boston University. He was tremendously plugged into what was going on. He discovered this relationship of the diatonic scale to the geometry of the crop circles. And he briefly said what Gerald Hawkins, he discovered these theorems that were not in Euclid, he got them from the crop circles. There was a whole big thing about them where he had a contest. Would people figure out what was going on, whatever? But unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. We lost somebody valuable because, you know, most of the science world's not paying attention. And to have real, you know, scientists who are telling the world, you know, things they should be paying attention to is very valuable. So, shame to lose him. We also lost John Mack. Most of you know who John Mack is. He was totally mesmerized. He came over to be a speaker they always have at the main crop circle conference, they always have somebody who's not crop circles but somewhat related because he had his whole connection with people who had been abducted. And he came over early and it was toured, was shown what was going on. Rewrote his whole talk. I have pieces of it in my movie, and he called it the most astonishing crossover from the other dimension in the history of the human race. He was so mesmerized by it. A couple of weeks after he gave that talk in England, he was killed by a drunk driver. He was over there. He had written a Pulitzer Prize-winning biography of Lawrence of Arabia, and he was there to give a talk for that, and he got killed by a drunk driver. They tried to blame it on a conspiracy. It wasn't, you know, England, they drive, you don't look the right way because you're not used to it. The cars are coming from the other direction, and so there are accidents like that, and the guy went to jail, so, you know, I don't think that was a conspiracy of any kind. Well, anyway, they checked it out. It didn't ever seem to be. People will like to think those things, though, you know. This is another thing from my booklet. The lines in the formation are 6 inches wide. Now, how is a hoaxer going to do that? You know, we're always trying to, the booklet is why real crop circles can't be hoaxed, and that's yet another illustration. And here we have frequent things. My movie has a couple of other stories in it where people meditate on shapes and they then appear. This was a group of Japanese tourists who meditated. They wanted a symbol they could recognize, and the next morning they woke up and he was origami. Another, why they're not hoaxed, they appear in places they should not appear. This is Andrew Lloyd Webber's estate behind high walls and motion sensors all over. Motion sensors picked up nothing, and he was not pleased, but there it was. Another thing that frequently goes on that people will discover in their pictures, that they get these weird light effects. They don't see them when they're photographing, and then there they are. This is a photograph on the right taken of the crop circle on the left, which they call the pillow. It's got a lovely 3D effect. But it hurt her camera. She was taking a picture from a helicopter, and she brought the camera in. What's wrong with the camera? And it was fried in some way that the camera people didn't know what had happened. But there are a lot of funny things with equipment, and my movie has several of those kind of things as well. And then here's another lovely thing. You get these 3D effects. On a non-sunny day, you wouldn't see this, but on a sunny day, it'll pick up the reflections of how the crop is laid. So if it's laid one direction, it catches the sun, and the other direction, it doesn't. And I just think this fractal pattern is quite beautiful. Another thing they do is that they use the features in the landscape and in their artistry. I love this pattern. They call it the ribbons. It has a lovely 3D effect. But those are tumuli. Now, in this area of England, it used to be sacred landscape. They had a lot of ritual and sacred ceremony there. Stonehenge, Avebury, big circle in the northern part, and kind of that's the area where a lot of crop circles appear. And you just can hardly walk without stumbling over something ancient and, that had some relationship to ritual and sacred ceremony and what have you. And then the crop circles very artfully use them. Like here's this circle ribbon pattern right inside those 3 tumuli. Here's one that's built around a tumuli. Here's one that's at the end of 4 tumuli. The 5th thing is a crop circle. I just love how sweet they are and how beautiful they are. So now we're going to show you a video that relates to this. There were 2 formations in a field. The first one, we call it the face. It's made of dot matrix. It's all dots. Dots. You're on the ground. What are these dots doing? When you get above it, oh my God, it's a face. Here's the field that it appeared in, and I'm going to show you a video about the thing behind it. That came a week later, and that's the response to the message one. A lot of you know that was kind of famous that went on. I thought the world was going to pay attention to this because it appeared right after this one. And when that one appeared, and you'll see the story, I said, okay, the world's going to get it now. Actually, CNN, and there was some press on this one. Whenever there's something really unusual, the press will come, and this was so big that it got press. And when this one appeared right after that, I thought, oh, now everybody's going to get it. Well, they didn't. That was the year before, and it's repeated in the end of this one that appeared the next year. This is what it looked like inside. The one on the left is a message we sent out in 1976, and the thing on the right is what came into our field that was a correspondence to it, and here's the video.
But in 2001, suddenly the media paid some interest, because then something appeared that was almost impossible to overlook. Right behind me is Britain's largest radio telescope, the Chilbolton Observatory. And here it was that the greatest sensation in the crop circle history was to appear in the fields right in front of the telescope.
On the morning of 14th of August 2001, a formation was discovered which was different from any other previously seen. From the ground it looked like a tangled mess, wisps of crops spread around in no system. However, in the evening with growing shadows, a picture appeared, unmistakably that of a face. That picture represented a whole new technique, a screen technique, the same that's used for printing a picture on paper. 3 days later, the face was joined by something that looked like a data strip. Rows of counters made out of standing and flattened crop. But soon an astonishing similarity is discovered. In 1974, the astronomer Carl Sagan composed a message that NASA sent into space from the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. Binary figures which constituted a graphic code presenting key factors about humans and the planet we live on. 27 years later, an identical pattern appears in a crop field right in front of a similar radio telescope. However, on closer inspection, it seemed to show that the code contained some fundamental differences. Sagan's message explained our calculation system, the dominant chemical substances within the elements that create life on Earth, about our DNA code, humans' height and quantity, and that we live on the third planet in our solar system, and lastly, a sketch of our radio telescope. The message received described the same calculation system, but that silicon is most dominant in life forms in contrast to carbon. The drawing also clearly shows a humanoid figure with large head in relation to its body. It's also explained that they have an extra string in their DNA, are approximately 4 feet tall, inhabit the third, fourth and fifth planets in their solar system, and have a population of around 21.3 billion. Underneath, the telescope has been replaced by something more complex. 1 year earlier, a strange crop circle had appeared in the same place. Is this the same illustration as in the sender's code? Is this the correspondent's radio telescope? If this is not an extremely clever and well-calculated joke conducted by humans, is it a serious response from an alien civilization?
The Chilbolton crop formations really gave new life to the speculations of who is behind this. Is it aliens? Where do they come from? And what is their purpose of this type of communication?
The following year, very nearly on the same day, a new picture appears that gives new force to the alien theory, this time in Crabwood, near the town of Winchester in Hampshire. Once again we see a face, but this time there is an unmistakable resemblance to something extraterrestrial. The picture also contains a print, somewhat similar to that of a CD, with something that appears to be a coded message. This formation also has a new type of design, this time with horizontal line patterns of variable thickness, similar to that of a TV picture. The message on the disc is similar to a spiral band built up of many boxes. But data expert Paul Weige manages to decipher the message.
And I had to enlarge the disc quite substantially on the computer and run some image analysis over it to make it clear so that I could see what was a standing tuft and what was flattened. And while I was doing this, I noticed that every so often there was almost a mistake in the diagram. It was like there was a tuft, where the little square tuft, it had done sort of half size. I thought that's a bit odd, and it seemed fairly regular. I was going round, and I sort of counted up, and it was sort of literally every sort of 8 bytes or whatever. And I thought, oh, 8 bytes, and you know, from computer side, is obviously some sort of binary code. So then I did the straightforward thing. I just converted it into ASCII, which is the standard sort of computer language that you encode the alphabet in. And of course I then started to get words forming out, and I thought, oh, you know, I'm getting somewhere here. So I then did the whole thing for the whole lot, and got this message.
The message is in English and reads as follows. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. Many have been surprised by this message. Are there aliens with such faces that we should be aware of? Or is this a picture of the sender? Does this indicate the start of actual close contact with neighbors in the universe?
My own, and this is only a hypothesis, belief about this, is that there's an effort of the extraterrestrials are gradually trying to communicate with us. A very slow process, giving us a lot of time to digest the fact that we may not be alone here.
That was Turjay Toftanis, who made Crossovers from Another Dimension. That's my next favorite crop circle movie. You know, they use recognizable shapes. This is kind of the answer to what Rusty was saying yesterday. Maybe it's nature or something. I forgot what you were saying. And I was saying collective consciousness. But look how specific. I mean, something's making decisions that, you know, it seems like there's a designer, and design is one of the aspects of human. So it seems to me that there's something that's got some kind of individualistic characteristic about it that is sitting around a conference table or something, deciding which designs to send or something, but very specific things that are specific. Because people say, oh, it's nature, or it's the future coming back, or it's whatever. But wait a minute, what's deciding on all these things? And, you know, it can't be nature giving us, like snowflakes. They're all different, they're all geometric. Wait a minute, snowflakes aren't telling us patterns we recognize, you know. Here's another one, the menorah, yeah. And that's an oil lamp on the top that conceivably could be lighting the menorah. That's another one we recognize, which is the DNA spiral. That one they started to use 3D so that the thing is seeming to go around and around, the bigger circles and the smaller ones. Another one we recognize, a snail. There's a teeny snail up above it, which is just kind of cute, another little feature. Now, I wanted to show you how they take some of the pictures. He's taking pole shots. I have a set of goggles, and you can attach it to the camera, and you can see the picture that you're getting. He's just random, you know, pointing and shooting. Now the technology has improved. That's a pole shot. That's the kind of shot you'll get. Here's the big formation. Here's the pole shot. Here's the big one. This is kind of interesting. This is called, they call this one Earth is Missing. It's a decent replication of the inner solar system, and the third ring out doesn't have anything on it. That would be us. And something about the numbers of, there's an asteroid belt or something, and the numbers in that outer circle conform to the numbers there. I'd have to look that up to see exactly. Here's a pole shot of it. This is what I'm going to end with, and then I'm going to show you my trailer. This is 2 days ago. I think the phenomenon may be leaving England. The last couple of years have been terrible. It's so contentious over there now. It used to be just heaven. Everybody was so excited and thrilled. I don't know if it's human nature that things fall apart or whatever, but the hoaxers have been a terrible influence. They're so deceptive. They're so unpleasant, and so the last couple of years, I'm thinking, why throw pearls before swine? You know, it isn't getting somewhere where, oh, we got it. It's going down, you know, in England. But Holland, first of all, there are many, the last couple of years, there have been many more all over the world incidents. We had one in Russia this year, never had one. Well, I think we had one before. But places that haven't had them have been getting them, individual ones. But Holland has something really interesting going on. There is a person there, his name is Robert van der Broek, and Nancy Talbot, the science lady, has been working with him for years. He's a psychic, and crop circles form all around him, and he can tell you when they're going to happen, before they happen. He can tell you a lot about what they're going to look like. And this is the latest one. And if you went on BLT, there's lots more to say about this, which I don't begin to have time for. But if you went on bltresearch.com, you can read this whole story. But I'll just show you. This is the new one in Holland. This is Robert showing you the drawing before it appeared. As I read the story, it was pressed very lightly down, and it's early on. Early on, the crop is not the crop is still growing, and so phototropism takes over, and it's going back up again. She's showing you here how there's node stretching, and typically when they do it with boards and knock the crop down that way, you'll get a little white line. You'll see that in my movie. There's no fake in here, and the illustrations of real are all over it. No scrape marks. That's what she's showing you here that you can't really see. That's kind of the end of the show. I want to just pull up this. They make wallpaper kind of things out of this. And now I'm going to show you my trailer and then a little tiny clip from my movie.
Worldviews determine what we allow ourselves to perceive.
Our existing worldview and the way we think right now is failing us.
To stand up for entirely new and unfamiliar realities requires a lot of heroism.
It was only, what, 1620 that they put Galileo on house arrest?
Everyone found it astonishing that these complicated works of art, sometimes as big as 2 football fields, were turning up in crop fields overnight. In fact, eyewitnesses say the patterns take only seconds to go down.
We've got this breathtaking beauty. This is phenomenon A. Phenomenon B is that the world can ignore it.
Yes, there are man-made formations, but the totality of it is such that there has to be something bigger at work here.
The first time when I walked into a circle, it was like, oh my God, what has the power to do this?
In terms of the real world as it is, this could not be made here.
You know, when I sit and think about it, I mean, that whole concept, encoded geometrical designs in Wheatfield, is just so far out there.
The most successful areas of research in crop formations are undoubtedly geometry and mathematics, because it's about the unfolding of the mathematical or geometrical structure within creation.
You cannot take crop circles in isolation. They're a tip of a multi-tipped iceberg, and they connect up with UFOs, they connect up with psychic phenomena.
Governments, armies, church does not want this out in the world because it changes the world, it changes humanity.
Is the crop circle phenomenon going to unite us as one humanity in relation to other intelligent life? Will we become better stewards of the planet and we live in peace?
That is so gorgeous. You look at that and you think, what on earth made that?
And now a little clip from the movie to end the show. So what about all of it? What does it all add up to?
I mean, one thing I would say is you cannot take crop circles in isolation. They're a tip of a multi-tipped iceberg, and they connect up with UFOs, they connect up with psychic phenomena, and it's all bringing everyone to the same point, which is that there is some change imminent, that there is something around the corner which we're being called to prepare ourselves for. And nobody can tell you what it is, but all these things have brought them to an awareness that there's something bigger than our usual mundane lives.
Crop circles, in a way, are an expression of humanity moving out of their chaos into more order, of becoming more spiritual beings.
Given that that's the possibility, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone were curious? You know, if there's any chance at all that this could be so world-changing, and don't we need to change this world? Aren't we idiots not to really pay attention and get to the bottom of it? Because if the end of the story was, oh my God, we are being visited, we would be one humanity in relation to the other. It would be in everyone's psyche. There's nothing going on in the world that pulls us together this way. So I'm a huge advocate of curiosity and investigation. So I hope you'll all join me and advocate as well. Get on social networking. I've got my DVDs out there for you. I have a little note that says, get on social networking and tell everybody to look at cropcirclemovie.com where they can see the trailer and have access to getting the movie. And I appreciate all of you being, you know, members of the good conspiracy. So thank you so much. You're good audience. I appreciate it.